and this is like one of the first things they teach you in therapy is like everybody's pain's real, right? Your perception of what a 10 might be for one person is going to be different for what a 10 might be for another person. So I can't begrudge somebody for their not having been through what I've been.
This is Running for Real, the podcast for runners who know that for every runner's high, there are just as many lows. All those just missed PRs, easy runs that feel hard, injury blues, and more. Each week, we'll talk to running, health, and wellness experts about their highs, lows, and best advice to build our confidence. Running for Real is about being honest, being brave, and most of all, not feeling alone. And now here's our host, Tina Muir.
Hello, my friends. Welcome to episode 199. Yep, that's it. We are at 199, and I am just kind of in shock that we're at 199. I am recording this post-baby. However, this interview that you are going to listen to today was recorded months ago. I am excited that Sarah, my guest host today, was able to record this and get these to me. And I've loved hearing how much you have been enjoying these guest episodes with Sarah. She's obviously done a wonderful job. Maybe you want to replace me with her. And it's been fun to hear some feedback, just to hear how well she has been doing. So last week we had an update episode from me, which was kind of a commitment that I'm making to changes in Running for Real moving forward, and a short episode with Alison Desir. I hope you did enjoy that. I'm sure I have lost some people along the way because of speaking out and kind of standing up for what I believe in with those things last week. And so if you are here, I'm assuming that you are with me and you're going to stand strong, and thank you for being a part of my journey. If last week didn't speak to you and you don't feel comfortable, you're just checking in quickly, feel free to enjoy this episode with Sarah. This is nothing related to kind of the future of Running for Real, but it is a wonderful conversation and Sarah did a fantastic job. And if someone else speaks to you better than I did, absolutely understand. I don't want to force people to kind of listen to my perspective when I'm not speaking to you. So last week I did have that episode and it was kind of a mismatch. It was a bit of a kind of a very scrappy episode, shall we say. But I really enjoyed kind of getting back into the swing of things and I'm looking forward to moving on. Okay, so today we have Brandon Hudgins who is on the show, and Brandon has quite the story, which is why Sarah wanted to choose him as one of her 4 guests who she was going to interview. He's battled a lot of mental and physical demons in pursuit of this big dream, which is the sub 4-minute mile. However, Brandon has vasculitis, which is a rare autoimmune disorder that has derailed his training and his body just over and over again. And he's faced death at a young age, which really put his running into perspective. You will hear about that. And he's found some success despite this disease, which prompted Brandon to write his book, Victory Over Vasculitis, to reach young athletes in a similar situation, which I think is absolutely wonderful. So you're going to hear a bit more about him today. We're going to go into each of those stories. But before we get to that, we're just going to take a minute to thank our sponsor, and we'll be right to the episode. Thank you so much to Tracksmith for sponsoring this episode of the Running for Real podcast. Now, you've been hearing me talk about Tracksmith for months now, and I'm really not getting fed up of it because I absolutely love the brand. During my maternity, I would wear Tracksmith clothes during the day, all day long, and you can see that because you can see any photos that I put up. Most of the ones on social media, I was wearing Tracksmith stuff. And that was not placed. I just genuinely was wearing this stuff all day long. And then I would wear that stuff that I'd been wearing that day, or maybe even 2 days, if I'm honest. And then I would put it on for a run and wear it on my run, or maybe even 2 runs, depending on how hot it was that day. And I love that I could just be comfortable in both situations. It looked good enough for me to walk around in my neighborhood and not feel self-conscious like I was kind of in, the active wear video that kind of went around virally as a joke a few years ago. Tracksmith clothes look good, they are comfortable, and I actually asked for Twilight tanks for my birthday, and I've been wearing those around because those are so lightweight and just dry fit, and they're perfect for summer runs. So I absolutely recommend those. I do have a new code for you, my friends, because I figured that we have been doing a lot with new listeners. But what about those of you who already love Tracksmith? I wanted to ask if I could do something for you guys too. And it also applies to new listeners and new customers as well. So use code FORREAL15. That's FORREAL 15. FORREAL 15 for real 15 for $15 off your first purchase of $75 or more. It is easy to spend $75. I love these products. They are so comfortable. You're also supporting me and the Running for Real brand and this podcast. So I really appreciate your support. Tracksmith clothes are comfortable, smooth, and as I said, you can wear them for daytime or for running. Go check them out by going to tracksmith.com. And you can use code FORREAL15 for $15 off your first purchase of $75 or more.
All right, welcome back to the Running for Real podcast. I'm your guest host, Sarah Crouch, and today I have with me a super special guest, Brandon Hudgins, who I got to be honest, I've never called him Brandon in his entire life. Everyone who knows him calls him B-Hudge. B-Hudge is a professional runner. He is the proud owner of a coveted sub-4 mile PR, and he also lives with a disease called vasculitis. So Brandon is also the author of a book called Victory Over Vasculitis. We're going to talk about that. And if you've never heard about the disease, don't worry. He's going to tell us all about it. So B-Hudge, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah. Now, right off the bat, I think it's really super important that we clear up what exactly vasculitis is, because we're going to be talking a lot about it. And I got to be honest, I didn't know a ton about it until I did a little bit of research for this podcast. So go ahead and tell us sort of what it is. I know there's several different types of it. And of course, the symptoms vary widely. So you can be more specific to your case.
So what vasculitis is it's a subset of autoimmune diseases. And if you don't know what an autoimmune disease is, it's your own body attacking itself. Almost all autoimmune diseases are an inflammation issue. So it's stuff gone haywire. For me, if you paid attention in biology class at all in high school, there's two types of white cells. There's B cells and T cells. T cells are the famous one because of like HIV and AIDS. The other half of your immune system are your B cells. My B cells are hyperactive and think that some of my own tissues are the foreign enemy and want to kill them.
Oh man, how often do these flare-ups or bouts, how often does that happen?
I've dealt with, so I was diagnosed originally in 2008 at age 21. Unfortunately, most people start presenting with stuff and they go 6, 8, 10, 12 months without getting a diagnosis. I was about, I believe, 6 or 7 months between the first symptoms I had in the fall of 2007 till I was diagnosed actually in April of 2008. So we're coming up on my anniversary. We celebrate.
I want to say congrats, but that seems totally inappropriate.
Yeah, well, it's so weird too when I get contacted by patients. I'm like, welcome to the club.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Sorry you had to find us.
No, it sounds like too, there's a lot of misdiagnosis and that a lot of people go for a long time without knowing what really they have because it is such a rare disease, huh?
It is. And not a lot of doctors. I mean, you start learning that not a lot of doctors, I don't want to say know a lot, but outside of their little subset of, if they're a general practitioner or like an ENT or pulmonologist, who were the first people that were treating me with the symptoms, because they were dealing with the symptoms, not my immune system. They, if they don't know about it, then they don't really look for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You would be surprised at the number of physicians that use Dr. Google.
Yeah. No, for sure. I think, because obviously, it's a very tempting thing to treat a symptom rather than the underlying problem, especially in a case like this where the symptoms can vary widely. So what were some of your first indications that you were sick?
Yeah, I mean, everybody that goes into the doctor with breathing problems and a sinus infection isn't going to walk out with a diagnosis of vasculitis.
They're going to walk out with an inhaler. Yeah.
Yeah, they're going to walk out with an inhaler and probably a Z-Pack.
Yeah.
And, go on with life. So my first couple of symptoms were, I was in the junior year of my collegiate eligibility. At the time, I was still at Winthrop University. Which is in my hometown of Rock Hill. And I was expected to have a good cross-country season. And I quickly found myself running behind the girls' team in the workouts.
Oh, man.
Not knowing what was happening. And it was like, why can I not breathe? So they sent me to a pulmonologist. And basically, to make it, not take up the whole time talking about this, I I just basically kept getting sicker and sicker and sicker. And I would get a little bit better. They would try some more drugs. I would get a little better. Then I'd get worse, and then I'd get better. But basically what ended up happening when you look back on it is somewhere in there around October, probably November, I started getting prednisone on and off. And prednisone is one of the drugs they use to treat it, because prednisone is actually it's a steroid, but it's anti-inflammatory. So it was calming my immune system down a little bit. And so that was like kind of, I was getting courses of that. And then it wasn't the antibiotics that were really helping that much. It was actually the prednisone. So it was actually kind of keeping my immune system in check a little bit. So I'd go through that, and then I get worse, and then I get better, and then I get worse, and then I got really worse. Then I had sinus surgery in March that year, and it wasn't until the follow-up in April where my ENT was like, your wounds aren't healing in your nose. Something's wrong with your immune system. And I was like, okay. He's like, I think I got an idea what it might be. And fast forward a couple of weeks later, I'm sitting at a track meet, because where else would I be on a Wednesday afternoon? In college, doing normal college kid stuff. I was sitting at a track meet to watch my sister race, and it was at like 6 o'clock or so, which is never a good time to get a call from your doctor. I looked down at my little flip phone and saw it was my doctor calling, and then I answered it. It wasn't just one of my doctors. It was two of my doctors hanging out together, which was super intimidating. Yeah. They called me and kind of like laid the diagnosis on me. This was pre everybody having smartphones and stuff. I do remember, like, it was a very brief conversation. It's just like, this is what you've got. We found a doctor down in Charleston, South Carolina, at the Medical University of South Carolina, that's treated a couple of cases of it. We're going to get you in contact with him and get you set up.
So back in 2008, because obviously we didn't really have smartphones back then, I have to imagine that you just went home and Googled what it was, because how would you know what it was? No,
you haven't heard of it. And at the time, they've changed the name of the disease. At the time, it was called Wagner's Granulomatosis. But Wagner was a Nazi doctor, and I guess he lost I guess in like 2013, they stripped the naming rights from him.
Makes sense, yeah.
And it took that long for it to be socially unacceptable. Go figure. So now it goes by its medical terminology, which, like, my subset of vasculitis is granulomatosis with polyangiitis. Which also, too, if you're talking to a doctor, it kind of allows them, if you understand medical terms, to like understand what is going on, more so than saying I've got Wagner's disease or Wagner's granulomatosis. So if the doctor's never heard of it before, they can kind of like put the pieces of the, kind of like you're talking elementary school, like break down the word. And so like that's what they can do, that if they're competent at all, which most doctors are. So they can then kind of like feel like, oh, okay, if they haven't heard of it, they then know where to look. So
yeah. And especially like, cause this is obviously, it's a disease that most people get diagnosed with fairly young. You have to kind of wonder, is it something that you're born with? Like it's just dormant until you reach a certain age? Like how does one end up getting it?
They don't know. And then the age range is actually weird. It's like mostly 50-year-old women and above, and then like younger people. Like I was going to say 20. That's
like the opposite of what you are.
Yeah, it's 2020 now. Don't tell me what I am. I'm sorry. So especially when I first started kind of getting involved in the outreach and stuff and looking at the statistics on stuff, I was realizing that it was either an older person's disease or like an extremely young person's disease, and I obviously kind of fall into the young person category, and it was scary because I got home and I Googled it, and I remember I think it was the Wikipedia page, because I think it was the first thing that came up back then when you Googled it, and I got through the first like paragraph, and in that paragraph it was like saying, it was kind of like telling you what it was, what effects, and then it was like up until the late 1980s, this had a 90% death rate 1 year after diagnosis, and I was like, okay, I'm not going to read anything else.
Nope. Yeah.
And so that was not an updated statistic. The statistics are obviously a lot better. And actually, to bring this all kind of full circle to what's going on right now, Dr. Fauci, who is the big doctor in the news right now that's helping this current administration deal with this pandemic, if you're listening to this far in the future, Dr. Fauci is actually responsible for developing the treatment because into the late 1980s, they didn't know how to put it into remission. They could just slow it down. And he figured out a combination of Cytoxan, which is a chemotherapy drug, and high doses of prednisone work to actually kind of what they try to do is like reboot the immune system. So they try to like nuke it all and then try to get it a reboot, kind of like you would reboot a computer your computers are getting laggy and stuff. You're just like, all right, well, we're going to wipe everything off this and start over.
Prednisone's going to just restore you to factory settings. And obviously it's great if it works, but at the same time, from what I understand, prednisone can make you kind of crazy. So I feel like you've had, I would love if you'd be willing to tell the story about the time that you were on a lot of prednisone and thought that there were people in your house. Would you be willing to share that with us today?
Yes, I would be happy to share that with you. So that actually followed. So fast forward to 2017, I was dealing with my third relapse. I got a phone call from my doctor that was like, hey, I don't know what you're doing today, but your lab work came back and your kidneys aren't working. You need to go to the ER. And I was like, awesome. Glad I didn't have anything on my schedule today. He's like, you need to go get a bag of prednisone. Tell them to call me. And I was like, okay. And what a bag of prednisone means, like generally 1,000 milligrams or more. Keep in mind, like when they give you something for like, if you've ever been put on some prednisone, most of the time they're going to give you like 20, 30 or 40 milligrams of it. And that will drive people crazy. I got 1,000 and a day or two later, about a day later, I was walking around the house. I had not slept in a while because it also like wires you. And so I had been like up and during the day, and it was like late afternoon. I was living with my brother at the time, and he wasn't home from work yet. And I was convinced it was just like, it was late evening because it was starting to get dark. And I was just like convinced there was somebody else in the house and that I was being watched. And so like, I was like closing all the shutters, and I was just like, I like put myself in my bed, and I was just like literally petrified to move.
Oh, man.
And there's a dog and a cat that live in the house that would have been completely rational to just be like, no, they're fine. There's nobody in the house. They would be going crazy if there's somebody in the house. But I just kind of like locked myself in my room and waited till my brother got home. And it's just like, at the moment, it's like funny to laugh at, but like at the moment I was like terrified. It was like being in a haunted house and not being able to get out of it. So,
yeah. I mean, if it makes you feel any better, and look, I've never been on prednisone in my entire life, but every time that Michael, and I think I've just listened to too many true crime podcasts, but every time he's gone, before I go to bed, like I'll look everywhere. I'll look in the dryer. I'll look in the freezer. I'll make sure that everything from my granny, like there's nobody in there. And yet I'll lay awake till like 1 a.m. with every creak of the house. I'm like, it's a killer. He's in the rafters. So I can't imagine what I would be like on prednisone, because you're a very like low key kind of chill guy anyhow. So if it makes you that wired, but what are some of the other side effects of the treatment? Because I know obviously weight gain can be an issue as well, right?
Yeah, there's I think even if people Google me, they can find it because I've shared it numerous times. I went on that first time in May that year because the treatment's kind of changed a little bit since then, but it was 6 months of oral chemotherapy every day and the high doses of prednisone. I also was getting, at that time in May, my kidneys had shut down, so I was getting 1,000 milligrams of prednisone every day for about a week when I was in the hospital. And then I started the Cytoxin, which is the oral chemo that I took. And about late fall, I started kind of like perking up a little bit. So that was late fall 2008. And I started kind of like trying to get out and jog again. Because with it being an inflammation disease and my kidneys being affected, my body wouldn't like filter out lactate at all. And a lot of my blood vessels are inflamed. So I describe running when I'm sick as like the last 50 meters of an 800, but like pretty much from step one, because your vascular system's cut off. You can't, your body can't filter what needs to be done. So it's just like excruciating. But because of all those drugs kind of like dampening down my immune system, I actually kind of started to perk up a little bit. And I started doing some running late that fall or whatever. And one of the parents, because I went out and like ran with my dad's high school team because my dad was my high school coach, and one of the parents happened to snag a picture of me running shirtless, and I'm nice and doughy.
I think I've seen that picture. Actually, I'm pretty sure I've seen that picture.
I got a nice round face. Most people won't even, like, when I've showed it to people, they don't even like, that's you. And I'm like, yeah, that's me.
Well, you also had short hair in that picture. I think that's mostly why. I'm used to you being shaggy.
So I had like, my hair didn't completely fall out from it, but it got super, super thin. So I got tired of it just kind of like coming out in clumps and stuff. So I just went ahead and like kind of crew cut it to get rid of it. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the tough thing too, is like you being an athlete, because also like you'd been running 10 years before you were even diagnosed with this. And I have to imagine like all really good high school and collegiate athletes, you probably had these huge goals like the sub 4 mile, like, a sponsorship someday and all that. Like, did this diagnosis, did it feel kind of like a death sentence for your running too?
no, because I do this terrible thing where I don't ask enough questions. Now I do too much research on my own, and so I just don't ask questions. But at the time, it was just like if I didn't honestly do much more reading. I think after I saw my rheumatologist and he started talking about the treatments, I think I went home and kind of like Googled around a little bit more and looked up some stuff. But I was just like, I asked him, I was like, hey, do you think I could run again? And him not knowing he knew that I was a collegiate athlete, but he was just like, yeah, you could run again. Like most people, we encourage people to exercise and stuff. And like later when I asked him about some stuff for an interview, actually, that Runner's World came to one of my doctor's appointments, I asked him this question and he was like, oh yeah, like if he'd asked me if he would have gotten back to that level, I would have said, no, there's no way. But luckily he didn't tell me that day. I mean, honestly, if he had, it probably would have just made me more angry and I'm more stubborn because I hate being told no.
Yeah.
So yeah, like, I mean, I had all these aspirations at the time and I was mildly successful at that point. I think I had barely missed regional qualifying as a sophomore at 1500. I think I ran like 348 or 349 for 1500. So, I was on a track to kind of get where I wanted to get, but as every athlete is, you're never satisfied with your PRs ever. So, yeah, I had lots of goals but it was kind of weird because like once I got it, it was just kind of like, all right, well, I'll deal with this and put it in remission and then move on with life. Like first time I dealt with it was physically the worst, but emotionally the easiest. Actually, it's the constant beating down later on that got me emotionally. So it's weird.
Yeah, no, I get it. It's almost like being in a boxing match with like someone that's not totally human. They're just going to keep hitting and hitting and hitting, and it's about how long you can kind of stay standing. And I think a harder part of it is like being 21, being a junior in college. It's like, I have to imagine people started treating you differently when you got the diagnosis, right? Like family and friends and people at school.
Yes and no. I didn't talk about it a lot. So like, even I was at the time I was living with four of my teammates at Winthrop, and I was already kind of a jerk and I just kind of became more of a recluse. Didn't change some of my habits. Also ended up with a little bit of a pill problem in there because they were giving me so many oxys and stuff and like take as needed for pain. And you're like, okay, I'll do that. I've been pain every day. So it was kind of around that time. Like I had an issue with it for a couple months, but luckily like running kind of saved me from getting too far into it. But like I realized I was like, when I had taken some and then tried to go for a run at one point in time and I couldn't really do it. And I was like, I don't think this is good for me. Yeah. But I didn't make the smartest decisions. I got drunk on chemotherapy a couple of times, which is just like not stuff that I would ever encourage any sane person to ever do. Yeah. It's just not smart. Like, but you're in college and you're used to, like, as an athlete, you can just kind of pound your body into submission. Like, it's like what we're all good at as distance runners. It's just like, oh, pain. Okay. Yeah, I can do that more. So, but it was kind of more of like trying to strive for some normalcy. And then it's like, we would host parties all the time at our house. And it's like, well, do I go outside my room where there's 100 people, or do I just like sit in my room? Yeah. And so,
well, because even with like, okay, yeah, you're surrounded by people on a college campus, but how many of them have any sort of close to similar experience to what you're dealing with? It's just so much deeper than the quote adversity that, like, college students might struggle with. Was there anybody you could talk to?
Yeah, I had a friend at the time, actually. I mean, she's still a friend. I say friend at the time. But there was a friend that I had who had actually just kind of dealt with like some rehab stuff and like kind of run away from a lifestyle at a beach area that had gotten her really into trouble. And so she kind of moved back home because we had gone to high school together. And so like our lives were kind of in this like really weird spot. So, and that was like 2008. So like, I remember like watching the Olympic Games and stuff with her and just kind of like hanging out around the house and just, just doing normal stuff that you would do with friends, and it being like way more low key. But yeah, so I had a couple of people, but honestly, like I kept most of it pretty close to the chest, which blew up later, which caused it to blow up later because I didn't have a good support system. I'm glad I have ants crawling on the wall. Yeah.
Do you mean like blew up like in like mentally, like in sort of like a, okay. You want to talk about that at all? Or?
Yeah. So, well, I mean, it's just like it anytime that you just like continue to shove stuff down, and especially with me, like I'm a pretty extroverted person, even though I like my peace and quiet. I get a lot of my energy from like helping people and being around people and talking. And I was just, it was just kind of boiling on the inside, and it all just kind of came to a head probably in like 2012. 2012, I really started with my first relapse. I had my first panic attack. I didn't know it was a panic attack. And then I started dealing with like the really severe emotional swings that year, not really not knowing. I mean, most of us athletes are people of extremes, like for us runners, we're either literally like running as fast as we can, or we're like crawling, or we're laying on a couch and doing nothing. So it's like true. we have two speeds. Most of us, it's just like go, 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 or like sleep.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like how I had lived life. And so like those extremes just kind of started getting more, and got in a living situation where things weren't the best. And that's when I ran back up the mountain to Boone and was living on a couch. And like, I kind of slowly started putting my life back together there. Started seeing a therapist, started taking some anti-anxiety medication and stuff. That was a whirlwind kind of year or two as I kind of tried to figure out what was right for me.
Yeah. But
I've since been able to get off of those. And it's not that I think they're wonderful, but I also think that you have to address the underlying cause. And if you can address the underlying cause, then most people can get off of them. Mine was a situational thing.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think honestly, in a case like yours, people are going to go one or two ways. Like they're either going to throw caution to the wind and be like, okay, well, I'm probably not going to live very long anyway, so I'm going to live recklessly. Or they go way too cautious and become super agoraphobic. And I guess ultimately both of those can lead to consequences later on down the road. So I'm guessing you sort of went the first way, like throwing caution to the wind.
Yeah. I mean, if I was reckless when I was 21, reckless enough to get drunk while, taking chemotherapy, which is just right now, just like it kind of makes my skin crawl that I made those decisions. It only got worse. And then once I got some better and closer friends, my time at App was, I was just really with my people, and we had a lot of fun. We got, I was able to resurrect my career and finally accomplish some things that I had set out to accomplish. And I was on a team that was just absolutely incredible. And I had guys that were more wired like me, and we had an eclectic group of people, and I wasn't like constantly bashing heads with people. So it just got worse.
Yeah.
Worse. And it kind of came to a head. It all finally caught up to me, honestly. It caught up with me in like 2016, 2017, like that kind of time period, because like kind of after I qualified for the trials, things slowly started falling apart in my life until I got sick again in late 2016, which I don't think is a coincidence. But it was just kind of all of that stuff just kind of building, and me just kind of white knuckling life and living all these extremes. And I didn't know any other way. I mean, obviously if we could go back to, everybody, no matter who you are, would, probably choose to make better decisions. But I definitely needed to slow down.
Yeah. I mean, being a young adult, it's hard enough because you're still just trying to figure everything out. And not many, I want to say kids, because now we're in our 30s and we're past that. But not many kids, like they're not faced with mortality very often. And I remember feeling sort of like invincible at 20. Like even it seemed like 30 was like so far off, like it would never happen. I have to imagine that was kind of robbed for you. Like you never really got that. But at the same time, it probably really put running in perspective. Like a bad race seems pretty trivial when you've been, at death's door at the hospital, right?
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's so weird because like I get wrapped up in it as much. You would think I would have learned my lesson. I'm a lot better now, but I would still get upset because when you pour so much into it, and especially for me, like I remember like after I broke 4 minutes that night, when they asked like how I felt, like in the little interview, whatever it was, Mile Split or Flow Track or somebody, they asked like, how do you feel? And I was like, I just feel like a weight was lifted off my shoulders. That's not really what you should say.
Yeah. Relief. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm relieved that this finally happened.
Yeah.
Cause like, it's like, I'm finally not crazy because like you've put so much into it. And like, I'd gone through so much, and that's kind of why the trials experience for 2016 wasn't that great for me, because like I wasn't using everything I'd been in as fuel for the fire. It was kind of like I was kind of dragging the weight of it a little bit. So now it's like now I handle bad races a lot better, probably too well, honestly. But you do learn to put things in perspective, and you recognize that like most people aren't going to remember your bad races after you've had enough of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it puts things in perspective. And
I think the trials is kind of like that. It's, you get there and then you realize, okay, this is just another race, or just another race where I'm trying to make the final. And really it was the journey there that actually meant way more. And talk us through that sub 4 mile, because I remember that day and it was, oh my gosh, it was so exciting. It was great. But talk us through that race.
It was a nice warm evening in Raleigh, North Carolina, at the Sir Walter Myler. I don't remember the date. If I was a good writer, I would.
Says the author of a book. Yeah.
So it just, everything had kind of been clicking that year. I'm up to this 2015. I was about a year and a half removed from any of the like immunotherapy treatments and stuff that I'd been on. I'd been able to train consistently. I'd been healthy. And just stuff started clicking. I ran 3:42 in June that year, which was a 1 or 2 second PR at the time.
In the 1500, just to clarify.
In the 1500.
Which is worth what, like 4:01 in the mile? Would that be about right?
3:43 is considered, I believe, still roughly. There's different tables. Depends on what table you use, but 3:43 is kind of the genuine consensus of equal to 4:00. So if you run inside of 3:43, then you're theoretically in that ballpark range. And that's the idea of if you can run another 109 meters at the same pace that you were, so if you're running 4 minute pace, you're running just under 15 seconds per 100. So for the extra 9 meters, and the fact that you're probably going to die a little bit. Which is funny, like some of the best 15 meter races I've had, it's like, I could make it another 100 meters. And then some of the worst ones I've had, I've like, I don't know. So it's about fair. So like I had run that and it was a PR and things were, starting to click, and like you're starting to see stuff in workouts that you kind of only like seen other people do. And I stopped, and you were around for some of this. Being at Zap, but like I stopped getting my head beat in all the time and like started like being able to like hang in there with people, and not just hang in, but like, okay, I'm okay. I'm not just like drowning every single hard workout or run that I do with these guys with
guys that had run 4 flat or under. Yeah.
Yeah. And had far better, 5K and 10K marks than me. And so like when I recognized that like the aerobic side was finally kind of in place to where it needed to be, like I always had the shorter speed to be able to accomplish it, but like putting the other piece of the puzzle together and being healthy, like I started to get confidence. I ran at 3:42. I had some really good road miles that summer where I was beating people that were sub 4 minute milers. And so like there was some races that summer that didn't really show on paper that I would have broken 4 minutes, but like, cause you go to a road mile run 4:08, everybody's like, what? But like, it's like when you're beating guys that run 3:56 or 3:55, you're like starting to get that confidence. Like, okay, I belong here. And so by the time Sir Walter got around, I just felt like I just had to show up and do it. It was no longer, you get to that point where you have confidence as an athlete that you, like things don't have to go exactly right for you to like accomplish what you're setting out there to do. It's just like, I'm just going to show up and do this. And that's just what happened. And, it was, I ran a smart race. I ran really even, it was just like, I ran 59, I ran 60, I ran 60, I ran 59 and 3:59.
At what point in the race did you know you were going to go sub 4, or was it not until the very end that you're like, okay, I'm actually going to do it?
Well, I felt really good still at 400 to go, and I saw the clock, and I mean, I can't tell you the number of times I've been 3 flat or right at it or just under it and not broken it. But I still had a lot of run left in my legs and I was giddy, and the crowd there, if people aren't aware, like they bring the crowd on the track there, and the crowd was going, my momentum was moving in the right way. So I just knew as long as I almost, if I can remember correctly, because it was one of those races where I was just kind of in the zone. The big thing I really remember is I remember seeing the clock with 400 to go and getting a little antsy, but then I was like, be patient, be patient, be patient. And then when we got down the backstretch, I started picking up steam, because I think I ended up finishing 4th or 5th in the race, but I think with 400 to go, I was probably 7th or 8th or something. And I started passing people, and you're starting to run up on the back of people because your momentum's going. So it's late in the season. So people tend to do this thing in mile races late in the season. Once stuff starts to go bad, they just shut it down. Mm-hmm. And so you're starting to pass people. And I remember running up on the back of everybody with about 200 to go. And James Snyder, my coach, who had driven down from Philadelphia to be at the race, was standing there and was just yelled some obscenities, and he didn't really
I know Snyder. That sounds like him. Yeah.
Yeah. He was just go come up. And so, I let it loose, and, cause I think I was right around 3:30 at that point. And, I just ran well down the stretch, and, I was able to get under 4 that first time. So it was exciting.
Thank you to my wonderful friends at Ultra for allowing me to do a giveaway for providing 12 pairs of shoes for my community for free. And you can enter to win a pair every month, a pair of Ultra shoes of your choice. You can go to ultrarunning.com and you can pick whichever ones you want, whichever ones your heart desires. If you are the winner each month, if you enter once during any month, you will be entered automatically into every month following that for the rest of the year. And I'm so thankful that I have a sponsor who is not only willing to help me, but also help my community, because I realize that running shoes can be expensive, or, it can be kind of scary to try a new brand. And I'm excited that they give the opportunity for people to try new brands. But also, I love hearing your feedback about how you are enjoying the switch when you make that change over to Ultra. It just makes my heart so happy hearing how much you appreciate it. And just as I haven't done it in a while, a reminder, my favorite shoes, I love the Escalante. That's probably my favorite of all. The Taurin is a great shoe if you want to make a transition over to Ultra and you're using another brand. I also love the Cayenta for racing and the Escalante Racer for racing. And the Provision is actually one with a kind of more of a support, like a arch support within it. And I've really been enjoying that kind of in my pregnancy time, because it helps with my arches, which, as many of you know, are not particularly good at holding themselves up during the end of pregnancy. So that's one that I have really been enjoying there. So you can go to tinamuir.com/ultra. That's tinamuir.com/ALTRA. And you can enter to win a free pair every month.
Even people who don't know running at all, everyone knows what a 4-minute mile means. But physiologically, there's not a nickel's worth of difference between running 3:59 and 4 flat. And yet you see the guys who go right under and they're so happy, and the guys that just miss it and they're so dejected, even though really it's kind of the same thing. But yeah, no, I remember that race, and I'm glad they do have the crowd on the track. It's a super exciting event. And obviously training had gone well for it. I actually remember you talking about Zap made me think about the day I met you. I don't know if you remember this, but it was when Zap was down training, and they did their winter training down in Greenville, South Carolina. Yeah. And we were out at, remember Tuxedo Lake?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's I think it's north of Greenville somewhere, but it's a little bit of a drive. But
it's in a random place.
It really is. Yeah.
I've run there numerous times, but yeah, it's a random.
Yeah. Yeah. And we pull up and we just park on the side of the road, and we get out to run this big loop around the lake. And I see this vehicle pull up that I could only suggest is held together by duct tape. This was your car, and you pull in, and I was like, "Who
was it? My 4Runner? It was probably my 4Runner.
It was the 4Runner." And it was kind of like a hush went over the guys, and they're like, "That's B-Hudge." And I was like, "Who is B-Hudge?" And I remember going on the run, and I can't remember who it was, but someone kind of told me your story, and I just remember being like, okay, when I'm around this guy, I can never complain about anything because he has just been through hell. Because I have to imagine the problems of other people probably sound pretty trivial to you at times, right?
Yeah, it's hard. not everybody, you don't want everybody to experience what I've been through, obviously, because it's just unnecessary. It's unnecessary suffering. So when people are complaining about a cold, I just I roll my eyes.
If I were you, I'd be like, yeah, that reminds me of that time in chemo. And then it's like, that's going to shut anybody up.
Yeah. So I've just learned to keep my mouth shut because I have, being the jerk that I can be at times, I've opened my mouth when I shouldn't have, and been rude. Cause it's not my place. Like, and everybody's, and this is like one of the first things they teach you in therapy is like, everybody's pain's real, right? Your perception of what a 10 might be for one person is going to be different for what a 10 might be for another person. So I can't begrudge somebody for their not having been through what I've been. And it's like, honestly, like it's what's really frustrating with me right now, like dealing with so many people that are upset during this pandemic that they can't like get out and do stuff or their lives having to be put on hold. And it's like, man, I dealt with years of this while the whole world was literally moving on. Right now, everybody's in this together. Like, there's so much more, it's like I've dealt with the financial insecurities. I've dealt with all of it. Like, I've dealt with the medical stuff. I've dealt with not knowing. I've dealt with, not knowing when I'm going to get back to work. Like, I've dealt with it all. So to see people like just refuse to like take a deep breath, take a pause for society's sakes, for the planet Earth's sake, for our race's sakes. It's just like, it boils my blood, but like, I have to remember, it's like, they're 2 weeks into this, like 3 weeks into this, a month into this, like they're not going to have the same perspective that I have. And because my knee jerk reaction is just to tee off on everybody. I just be like, you're stupid. Like, you need to stop. Like, so it's hard. But I've so far managed to, I think, only attack one person on social media.
Well, good for you. Well, I think also it's like just like the pain as a perspective and your level of annoyance during this time as a perspective. You also have, though, this enormous silver lining, which is like, okay, up until the last 30 years, this was a disease that claimed the lives of more people than it didn't.
Yeah.
Whereas, you look at someone like, and obviously one of the teammates that I had and someone that you were really close to was Cameron Bean. Yeah. Who at the age of 28 was hit and killed on a run. Oh, you're wearing your Cam Run shirt. Oh, that's great. For those who can't see, there's an annual run in Chattanooga where Cameron was killed, and it's in his honor. And Cameron was, you guys did a lot of training together, and that must have been strange. Like someone like you who had, kind of faced this mortality, and then someone like Cameron who was just vibrant, full of life, healthy his entire life, and then all of a sudden was just like snuffed out like a candle. It just seemed like he was gone. Like, was that because I always wondered like if you handled that differently than the rest of us. Do you know what I mean?
It was really hard. It's still really hard.
Yeah.
I miss him. There's still times I do something stupid and I still like want to send him a Snapchat or send him a text or call him. Actually the next to last time I saw him was the night that I broke 4 minutes. Him and Ann, his girlfriend, came down to the race, and we were close, and it still sucks, but I don't know. We all handle that stuff in our own way. I know the steps of grieving because I unfortunately, I lost 2 teammates while I was in high school.
One of them drowned, right? Is that right? Or
yeah. One of them drowned, and the other one died in a drunk driving car accident. Mm-hmm. So, I've been acquainted with that process, unfortunately, probably too well. So like, the steps that you have to go through, but there's still like so much of it's still like really raw. Like I still remember like where I was sitting in my house when Ann called me. I still remember not being able to get a hold of Moen. And like literally just getting in my car and driving because I couldn't deal with like not being able to tell him. And so like I just drove, and so, I still remember like when I was driving the text message I got from like Ryan Van Hoy, who had been a Zap intern, and he's now the Ole Miss coach, but he had come down to Sir Walter because he and I had known each other since high school, and he'd come down to Sir Walter, and he just like sends me a picture. This is like literally he's heard within, this is within an hour or two. And he just like sends me a text message. And it's a picture of him and Cameron standing at the bar after the race. And I was like, thanks for bringing us together on, like, that's the last time I ever got to see him. Yeah. And so like, I just like had to pull my car over there on the side of 321 and sob.
Yeah.
And so like, it's like, there's still like those moments like that where it's just still really raw. One of his other friends, Jill, who lives in Chattanooga, said something. This was at the second cam run. So this would have been 2 years after he'd passed away. And she was like, the size of that event never changes. Life just gets bigger. And that's, I think, so true with any of this, whether it's the stuff that I've dealt with my health, or whether it's losing a loved one. Those things are still very painful and very real. Like the rest of life kind of moves on and gets bigger and other things happen, but like you don't stop missing that person. Because like somebody like Cameron, like our time together wasn't done.
Yeah.
Right. Like we would still be friends today. We would still talk on the phone. We would still do stuff together. So when somebody like that's like ripped away from you, this part of your kind of like close knit group, it's tough. And everybody handles it in their own way. It's tough for all of us when you lose somebody that's close to you.
Yeah. I mean, I find myself every September around that time, because this year, I'll be 31 in September, and it's like, it doesn't make sense in my mind for me to think I'm 3 years older than Cameron was like when he died. Cause it just, at the time, it didn't, cause he was older than me, but it didn't seem like, but now it just seems so young to lose someone. And I think, with your perspective on life, it's, cause look, like car accidents, war, vasculitis, nothing increases the death rate. 100% of people die. It's just that
none of us make it.
No.
Newsflash: nobody makes it out of this alive.
You're gonna break somebody's heart on this podcast. No, yeah, but honestly, I think
I've been called a jerk before.
That's okay. That's okay. But yeah, no, I think it just, and if we've learned anything from people who die young like that, it's okay. It's okay to live life with a certain amount of urgency and get stuff done. And for you, it's like, okay, you're now like you're in your 30s. You've already written a book. You've broken 4 minutes in the mile. I guess we really haven't talked about the book. I always wondered, like, what made you decide you wanted to put a book out there about your story?
Several things. One, I had been blogging a good bit at the time, and I was like egotistical enough to think that I had something unique that could be shared with the world in written form, despite failing English in high school.
I know. I've heard you say that you absolutely hate like English and that grammar is not your forte, and yet you go and write a book. Yeah. I don't understand that.
Well, I can do the act of writing, just like a lot of people. I'm not trying to be rude, but like a lot of people can go run, but not everybody can break 4 minutes in the mile.
Yeah.
Like I can write, but I don't write well. I write like I talk, which is like a idiot from South Carolina that failed English, and so I need help. So, which is why you have coaches or editors or whoever. So I had the idea, and much like anything we do nowadays, when you don't know how to do it, you go, Mr. Google, how do I write a book? And I had done that a few times, and it was just overwhelming with all the information, and didn't really go anywhere for about 2 years. And I had other things on my plate, like running and trying to pay the bills and trying to stay alive. But it was always in the back of my mind as something I wanted to do. And then in late 2016, I was at a gathering in Pittsburgh after a race I had run. The marketing director for the Vasculitis Foundation lives there because they're all kind of remote. There's like a kind of a small head office with like 2 people in it, but everybody else is really remote. So he lives in Pittsburgh. We had a gathering for some local patients and doctors at his house after the Liberty Mile, which is pretty much my favorite race every year. So shout out to them. And after that race, he had some people over, and one of the people he had on was actually a guy that had helped design some of the artwork for the original like Victory Over Vasculitis campaign that we did for the foundation. And that guy he was a writer. He had interviewed people like, I don't know why this is the first person that comes to mind, but he had actually interviewed Andy Warhol and some other people back in like the late 70s, early 80s. It was kind of an eclectic guy. We actually had a lot in common outside of being like me being a runner. It had nothing to do with what we had in common. We had a lot of other things in common. We liked some of the same authors and liked some of the same music and stuff. So we kind of hit it off. And Ed's like, Brandon, have you ever thought about writing a book? Like, John could probably help you. And I was like, oh, really? And this was like literally just after this, like as we were kind of cleaning up for that party. And so that was kind of the seed of it. And John's like, yeah, like I've seen you've got some blogs. Why don't we see if there's like something in some of the things that you've written that we can be able to like expand on? And so that's kind of what we did. So we pulled some of the things together and kind of started like getting a rough outline of what we kind of wanted to talk about and what the theme was, which the overarching kind of theme of the book, which is not really mentioned like directly in it, but it's like the kind of theme of all of it is like, if you want something bad enough, like you'll find a way to do it. Right. And that's how I approached everything. And that's kind of what the steps are and the pieces of that book are, is like, here's some tools that I learned kind of doing that. Like, follow a routine. Like if you have a bad race or a bad day, like give yourself 24 or 48 hours and then dump it. Right. Like the just like lessons and stuff like that I had learned. And then some stories of kind of how I got there. And so we kind of pieced that all together, and it took about a year. He was not super involved in like the publishing world. Like I didn't have a publishing contract or anything. There's all these lovely platforms now where you can self-publish, and it just kind of makes you the vehicle of, the gatekeepers are kind of gone now. And so, unless you're going to move hundreds of thousands or millions of copies of a book, it's honestly the better way, in my opinion, to go. But I'm also the semi-pro distance runner that's worked his way through stuff. So, it's not something that's ever going to sell something as much as like Harry Potter, but
it's also a very niche topic, vasculitis.
Yeah.
But I have to imagine, like, even, okay, let's say one 18-year-old kid gets the diagnosis, turns to Dr. Google and says, oh, but there's actually a book, Victory Over Vasculitis, written by this guy who has it. That has to be a comfort, because I'm guessing that was the first of its kind. It's probably the first piece of literature about vasculitis that isn't just like a textbook. You know what I mean?
So there's one other girl, Cindy Abbott, wrote a book. She has vasculitis and climbed Everest.
Oh, wow.
And wrote a book about it.
Hey, you could still do that. You're very young.
Yeah. It's just not like, it's kind of like you think about like, what other crazy things am I going to do later in life? I just don't think that's it.
I don't like the cold. I get it.
Yeah. I like the cold more now than I used to, or don't mind it as much as I used to. But that's just, I don't know. Yeah. Too many people have done it, I think.
I hear you. I hear you.
That sounds stupid. But
this is a good question, though. Have more people, because I think it was the same year that both happened, have more people climbed Everest than have broken a 4-minute mile?
By a landslide.
By a lot? Okay.
Yeah, by a lot. By a lot. That doesn't make one less hard. I mean, it's just like at the end of the day, like being a sub 4-minute mile, a lot of it is about hard works. But like, if you can't break 60 seconds in a quarter, like you can't run a sub 4-minute mile. It's like literally physics say you can't do it. So
I gotta tell you, that is one of my biggest pet peeves when you see a movie and it's like, oh, the football guy decides he wants to run a 4-minute mile and then he does it. It's like, no, that is physically impossible. It makes me so angry. That's one of my biggest pet peeves in cinema, I have to say.
Well, some of I had an interaction actually after I broke 4. I was in a local music shop back home in Rock Hill, and I got in an argument with a parent of a kid that I went to high school with. I got in an argument with his mom in the music store, and she's like, yeah, I saw a thing on you in the paper recently. I was like, yeah, I finally broke 4 minutes for the first time. It was a pretty big deal. I was pretty excited, and she was like, well, Alexander did that in gym class in high school. And I was like,
oh, that made my whole stomach just clench. That has never happened in gym class, I promise.
And then you're like stuck there and it's like, you're like, what? No, I mean, maybe he ran 5 something, but I don't think he ran 4 something. And he was like a good athlete. He played on the soccer team. Like really, he was a good athlete. Like, I think he might've even played like small school soccer. Like he might've played, I think he went on to even either play JUCO soccer or played a D3 school. Like he was a good athlete. So you're just like,
yeah. It's remarkable though how those people will stick to their guns and just defend it. I remember I had, oh my gosh, it was a cousin. I'm not going to name him, but he was a little bit older.
He knows who he is.
He knows who he is. So it was at like a family reunion, and I hadn't seen this kid in years, but he was maybe 16, and he's like, oh, I heard you guys are runners. We're like, yeah, we're running, and we stayed, and it went well. And he's like, yeah, well, I ran a 3.5 minute mile in gym class. And I was like, well, that's pretty good considering you broke the world record. And he goes, yeah, but I was sick at the time, so I probably could have gone faster. And I just grabbed my plate of, casserole and turned around and walked away. Because that's all you can do. That's all you can do.
It really is all you can do. Yeah. Because I think a younger me would probably teed off on her a little bit.
No.
But you're just like, no, I'm pretty sure he didn't, but.
Doesn't it make you wonder, though? It's like, have I ever said something totally ignorant about another sport without realizing? I'm sure I have. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I have. And I've, and I try I think I've gotten a little bit better about recognizing it. I can't remember. There was something that happened in the last year and I put my foot in my mouth about it. And I was like, oh, no, I deserve that. I deserve for you to tee off on me because I deal with that all the time on a weekly basis at the gym, I deal with that. So I deserve to be berated for this. I can't remember what it was. Oh, it'll come to me probably tonight when I lay down for bed. But
let me know if you think of it because now I want to know. Yeah.
I totally put my foot in my mouth. So
yeah. Well, we've all been there. I guess in that case, we deserve one or two people coming up to us telling us they've done something that's physically impossible. That's fine. But yeah, I was curious. One last question about the book. Has anyone that has vasculitis, I'm sure it's happened, reached out to you and said, look, thanks for writing this. This helped me out. Tell us about that.
They, literally, you kind of hinted at it. There was a kid that was diagnosed probably 2 years ago. He got diagnosed. He was a high school runner because I've met some other people that jog and run or they've run marathons and, later in life get the disease, but I'd never met the closest thing I had met was there was a football player that played at Michigan that got it. And there was a young swimmer in Charlotte that had gotten it when he was, I think, 14 or 15. And I, had kind of gotten to know him, but he was I never really had relationships with either one of those, more talking kind of to their parents and stuff. But a parent reached out to me, a kid from West Virginia, Ronnie, and he got diagnosed. He was a runner, pretty good runner, and got diagnosed with it. And while he was in the hospital, his mom actually bought my book for him. Oh. And he was in the hospital for a bit. And he actually, from what his mom said, read it a couple of times. As it is awkward enough trying to talk to any teenage boy. I'd talk to a lot of parents all the time, but I'd reached out to the kid and I got she was telling me how much her son loved it and all this other stuff. And, I think I sent him a signed picture or a signed copy of the book or something. And so I, try to strike a conversation with him. And it's just you get one word responses, but he was a runner and he's now running in college at the Division I level. And believe it or not, Mike Snyder recruited him without knowing what was going on. Wow. And so they got to have I think a pretty cool conversation because Snyder called me after he talked to the kid for the first time because as all college coaches do now, they look up a kid there, they find him in results, and then they immediately search him on social media and figure out whether or not they're an athlete that lives an athletic lifestyle. And as I've just berated myself for all the dumb mistakes that I've made, but
that was a really kind way to put it, though. I like that.
But no, it is. It's is this person somebody socially that we would potentially like to be part of our team? And he started noticing that the kid had used the Victory Over Vasculitis hashtag. And so he contacted the kid, they got to talking, and the kid didn't mention anything about it. Cause I probably had I been diagnosed at age 2 and was a runner. Cause he got back healthy. He ran well enough to get the attention of a Division I coach. And Snyder's reaching out to him, talking to him. And he's like, hey, so I really wanted to ask you. He's like, I noticed you were using this hashtag in some of your pictures, Victory Over Vasculitis. What's that all about? Is somebody that's got vasculitis or something or whatever. He's like, oh, well, no, I got this disease. It's actually called Granulomatosis polyangiitis, but it's not a big deal. I've got it in remission. I promise it's not going to be a thing. There's this other guy that's been able to run really fast, that he's got it. He broke 4 minutes and he's running the trials and stuff. So it's not going to be an issue. I don't want you to know anything about it. He's like, well, do you know who that guy's coach is? The guy's like, no, sir. He's like, you're talking to it.
Oh, that's great. Oh, wow. Man, that's super cool.
Yeah. So Snyder actually got to recruit the kid. The kid, ended up picking a different school for school reasons, but I was obviously pulling for him.
Yeah. And that kind of makes me wonder. It's like, okay, like if you could go back now and talk to 21-year-old B-Hudge who'd just been given this diagnosis, what would you tell him? Like, what advice would you give him about the years ahead?
This is actually kind of interesting because I've got a friend that's been diagnosed with cancer that's still pretty young. And I actually just kind of went through a lot of these same emotions again, because, I was talking to him the day they got diagnosed, and it's just like they were handling it pretty well. And just because you don't know, the uncertainty and all of the stuff that's getting ready to happen. But like I do, it's like I know what this person's about to go through. And it just makes you really sad. The slow down. That would probably be what I'd tell myself, is slow down. But then again, maybe if I'd have slowed down too much, maybe I wouldn't have accomplished what I did. Maybe I wouldn't have the story that would allow me to share this. You can what if to death, but the biggest thing to me, I think some of the biggest hurdles, as many athletes are, you're so motivated to push yourself and get out the door far too often sometimes, or do too much. It's been, one of the blessings of having Snyder as a coach is most of the time he has to slow me down, pull the reins back a little bit, or I'll run myself into the ground. If he was the first one to pull the plug recently, honestly, like with all the stuff going on, he's like, I don't feel comfortable. I don't feel comfortable with you training. And I have not gotten upset with him as a coach. He came to App my second year as an assistant and, started coaching me immediately after I graduated. So that's 2011. So we've been together now for, we've been around each other for 10 years. He's been coaching me exclusively for 9. And he's been through all of it with me, and I have never been upset with him. But my knee-jerk reaction was to get upset. I was like, no, like I can handle this. I'll be smart, blah, blah, blah. Because there's that fear of like FOMO, your fear of missing out. Like, I don't want to miss this opportunity. But about 24 hours of thinking about it, I was like, man, he's right. Like there's so many, and as you know, right now, there's so many things that are more important in life. Than just running a time on a board. There's bigger things. Like if I never get back there, so be it. But like if they go on and have this year, I can't participate in it. Yeah. I can't be part of this. And for my health, for my community's health.
Out of curiosity, I mean, I don't know if you've talked to anybody about it, but how would, if you contracted like COVID-19, how would that be different than say someone like me getting it?
So right now, they don't know too much. So I was actually just reading a thing on Twitter. They've gotten the American College of Rheumatology. So like mine is considered under the rheumatology branch because that's kind of who handles a large subset of the autoimmune diseases. I think there's 17 or 19 patients across the world that have contracted it that have some form of vasculitis. But the worry is where that person's at with their treatments. So like as of my last lab work in November, I still only have half an immune system. So those immunotherapy treatments that they give you basically kill all my B cells. So I only have half an immune system right now. So I would only, and I don't know all the intricacies of how that virus works and what immune cells need to be present and what quantities to fight it off. So theoretically, I'd be going into battle with half my troops.
Yeah.
So
no, that makes a lot of sense, and it's definitely enough reason to kind of follow the guidelines, and that actually kind of makes me wonder, because now all of us are kind of seeing behind the curtain. But what has your experience been like with the healthcare system in this country? Has it been good or bad? I guess maybe that's too narrow of a. It's probably been both.
No, it's not. Right? It's been both. You learn how to work it a little bit. Like actually, I've been on the phone today with I had to go to the emergency clinic for I thought it was an ear infection, but it turned out it was a tooth infection. About 2 months. Yeah, about 2 months ago. Like I had a tooth removed, which in most people's would be a 10, which for me, it was just like, okay, this is a Tuesday. I'm fine. I don't give like rip it out. Whatever. But all of a sudden you get an email. It's like, hey, we're going to take $200 out of your bank account tomorrow. And I'm like, no, you're not. I'm unemployed. No, you're not. I'm going to pay you some money, but you're not going to take all the 200. So you learn like, you learn how to work the system. But it's certainly one of my giant pet peeves. And one I've kind of, actually, I was recently talking to Julia Lucas about this, ironically, because like she made some comments on social media that I think made some people angry. And she was like, whoa, guys, I'm just trying to like give you my experience with some stuff. And I was talking to her. I was like, yeah, that's kind of what I'm worried about if I start talking out about some of this stuff. Like, I don't want to alienate people, but like people need to know, like this, it can ruin people. Like it's ruined me financially. Like it's going to take me years to recover. And, I passed the $1 million mark years ago on what it costs to keep me alive, with all, like, for instance, when I go get an immunotherapy treatment, that bag of drug costs $15,000 and I have to get multiple ones a year. And at a time I was getting one a week for 4 weeks. So like, that's just for the drug alone. That doesn't count the time that you sit in the reclining chair or the hospital bed. That doesn't count any of the other, things that they're going to charge you for. Now, insurance will pay on some, but at the time would pay some of it. When I registered this year, I found out that Blue Cross Blue Shield was no longer covering that drug. So if I were to need it right now, you can file for some assistance from the drug company.
Yeah.
But that drug has been around for about 25 years. It was developed for some other stuff, and then they realized it could be used for vasculitis. In about 2011, 2012 is when I think it got FDA approval for vasculitis stuff. So it was like, at the time, last time I checked on these stats, they could sell that drug to me at what you would mark up regular retail. Like, for instance, like I work part-time in a running store. If they marked up that drug, what we mark up our running shoes, I could buy that back for about $250 or $300
versus $15,000.
Versus $15,000. And it's not a new drug. It has been around for a long time. So that ruins people. Like, and at no fault of your own. It's not like I was living recklessly and, made some dumb decisions. It's just like, this is something that's happening to me and I have no control over. And our healthcare system, this stat is known a lot. Somewhere between 30 and 40,000 people in this country die every year because of lack of access to healthcare. We pay more for it at the point of care and have oftentimes worse outcomes than a lot of the developed world. And when you say things like that, people get very angry. But we're seeing right now, like, one of the dumbest things I think this country ever did was tie healthcare related to your job. And especially when you see how so many people are kind of self-employed or gig employees or contract workers now in our economy, and you don't have access to those things. And we're already seeing right now that health insurance is probably going to go up 40 to 50% next year just because of the COVID thing. So already you're going to have a large part of America laid off, and you're going to make their healthcare more expensive. Yeah. So when you talk out about those things and you do say things like you think health insurance companies are the mafia, it's going to anger people. But like, the reality is like, it affects people's lives. People die. I have had to lay in bed with heart palpitations thinking I was having a heart attack and try to determine whether it was worth me putting my bank account in the red to go to the ER.
Yeah. And that seems like a decision that no one should ever have to make. And it's particularly scary in a case like yours, where it's a very unpredictable disease and you don't know when the next relapse is coming. You kind of have to sort of live as though it's not coming. And then if it comes, like, kind of cross that bridge when you get there. But okay, so assuming that, that you stay healthy and that all this blows over, I know we're getting short on time, but I do want to ask, what's going to be next for you in terms of running throughout that? Obviously there's no races on the schedule right now, but do you plan to have a fall season? Yeah,
the big news right now, and I don't know if you see this, I just saw on Twitter actually right before we got on this, the IAAF has said nothing counts until December 1st.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Yes. So the window, if you ran a qualification mark up until April 1st, or ran or threw or jumped or whatever your discipline is in the Olympic events, if you ran or performed a qualifying mark up until April 1st from when the window opened in May of 2019. That will count. But everything from April 1st to December 1st, if there is a competition, it will not count towards Olympic qualifying.
I was wondering if they were going to put together some track stuff for the fall to help people qualify, but no, it sounds like it's all going to be next spring then for the postponed trials.
There might still be some stuff. I've reduced. I'm training at I'm running at about 70% right now. I'm still getting out the door every day. I made the mistake early on of backing off a little bit too much mentally because like I have to have a routine. And so that kind of caught up with me there with the stress of like wondering if I was getting ready to get laid off or not and still having to work and go in and put myself at risk and that whole stuff. And I had already kind of stopped and pulled back my training and I was just a mess. So like, I was like, I got to get back on sort of a regimented schedule, but like at the same time, it's really easy to go overboard. And like Snyder's not coaching me, but like, I want to still do some stuff to stay in touch with stuff and keep a normal routine. It's important to be healthy. And then like, I'm not going to lay around for 8 months and do nothing. But I also don't need to put myself at risk. So I'm training at about 70% right now, still getting out the door once, sometimes twice a day if I feel up to it. But also putting things in place. Like I went and did a little fartlek today, but like I don't allow myself to take my flats.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you.
It's like, it's like you got to put things in place because like once you put those on, then it's going to get serious. And like, because it's like I can go out there with the attitude of like I'm going to take this easy. I'm just going to like move my legs a little bit, do something to kind of work out some of this energy that I've had from being around the house, or work out something that's been stressful, and be healthy and still get out and do the thing that I love to do more than pretty much anything. But I don't need to put myself at risk. I don't need to dig a hole. But then like one rep in, you're already like, well, I ran. I feel good. I can go a little faster. And it's like, no, that's not. And it's like, I'm trying to make sure I don't go as far as I normally would go if I'm doing a workout but then you're like, well, I'm not going as far. I can probably go a little faster. And so like that crazy part of your brain. So like, I'm having to like kind of put up some roadblocks to make sure that I don't get out of hand.
I think in a case like that, and kind of like in my case as well, this whole period of time, it's sort of a blessing in disguise because it gives us a chance to sort of remember why we started doing this in the first place. When there are no races, there's no money on the line. There's nothing like that. It's just, okay, do I still want to go out there and run? And for a lot of us, the answer is, yeah, I actually do. So, all right, I want to kind of round up with some really, really stupid questions. So I apologize for these in advance. Only one is about running. They are. Wait till you hear them before you tell me if they're stupid. The first one, it is about running. So I'm going to give this one to you. Would you rather break the American record in the mile or bring home an Olympic bronze medal? So it's not a gold. It's still an Olympic medal. But would you rather have the American record? But you only get the American record for 1 week and then somebody else breaks it. That's the stipulation.
Then I definitely would take the medal.
You think so?
Time for times, yeah, I would definitely take. Like, this is the thing is like, especially in our sport, like you might consider an American record, but that Olympic medal can, especially now for me, financially, like you know how the sport works and what that can net you down the line.
Doors, yeah.
Yeah, that opens doors that maybe. I mean, the reality is like that the American record would open some doors, but financially speaking, I mean, I would rather have Olympic bronze medal any day of the week than.
Yeah, I gotcha. I don't think an American record is going to get you on a Wheaties box, but a bronze medal might do it. All right. Second one. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I would take, honestly, I would take any medal or championship over a time, but that's just.
Yeah, no, that's good. I think I agree with that. Secondly, all right. Would you rather only be able to speak one day a week? Let's say Tuesdays. You can talk on Tuesdays, or you can speak every day of the week, but it has to be in Pig Latin. I told you these were stupid.
No, these are great actually. We used to do. This is how we entertained ourselves in college because we didn't
long bus rides. I hear you.
Yeah. When you're not flying everywhere and you're stuck in a van, the conversations or the would you rather's or those things. There was a lot of these. I would go with the only talk on Tuesdays.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. That'd be awful to only speak in Pig Latin. I'm just trying to think of even having to do that for an hour. It'd be exhausting.
I'm enough as it is. I think that like if I started talking in Pig Latin, it would just like completely freak people out.
I think that's a safe bet. All right, 2 more. Would you rather have 6 failed marriages or never get married at all?
Oh, never get married at all.
Okay.
Hands down.
That was a quick response. I feel like you're already sure about that.
Like my girlfriend and I have been together for 8 years, something like 9-ish years, something. We're not really, neither one of us are really certain when we actually started dating. And she doesn't really want to get married either. And I'm not in a rush. So
I wish I would have known that. I would have picked a different question. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's for me, that's an easy question.
Yeah. All right. Well, hopefully this last one should be a little bit harder. Would you rather painfully stub your toe once a day for the rest of your life, or just lose a finger of your choice? So like your finger's just gone forever.
Painfully. I occasionally play guitar, so I kind of need my fingers. So I would stub my toe. I mean, my toes are pretty much black anyways from running.
We do that all the time anyways. Yeah. Oh, man. All right. Well, thanks so much for being on today. So you can get victory. Oh, wow. I'm going to butcher it. Victory Over Vasculitis. Oh, my gosh. B-Hudge, would you tell us the name of your book, please? So
it's actually, and I just realized I think you said this one. It's the title of the book is actually Going the Distance.
Oh, wow. I did butcher it. I didn't even get the right title.
The Victory Over Vasculitis is the campaign that I run with the Vasculitis Foundation.
Gotcha.
If you search into that, you can find it. But the book's on Amazon and Kindle. I had signed copies up on my website, brandonhudgins.com, but to get them, I have to get them. The company that I went through got bought by Amazon, and that's non-essential right now. So they're not shipping out author copies last I checked. Yeah. So I don't have any right now. But
this should come out, though, sometime in, I'm thinking midsummer. So hopefully by then they'll be up.
Yeah. So if you want to check my website, because people have been interested in signed or personalized copies, and I don't charge more for them, the same price that you would get for Amazon, which is $15. If you've got Kindle Unlimited, it's free. If you do the Kindle Unlimited thing, it's free on Kindle. And there is a Kindle copy of it as well. It's like, I think half the price or whatever. So that's where it's at.
All right. And then where can people connect with you online?
So on Twitter and Instagram, I'm at B-Hudge Nasty, which I refuse to change. I still
don't ever change. That's okay.
Yeah. And I quite honestly, I get a kick out of like traditional media when they try to tweet stuff out and they have to put that in there. So I think it's hilarious.
That's pretty funny.
It's the little things. So I'm at B-Hudge Nasty, and I try to post regularly on Instagram and Twitter, and I'm just Brandon Hudgins on Facebook. So I'm pretty easy to find. I don't have nothing's closed down, so you can find shirtless pictures of me running all over the internet.
Well, that just sounds fantastic. Well, B-Hudge, thank you for being with us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Sarah.
My friends, if you have a minute and you could leave a review on your favorite podcast player, Apple Podcasts, aka iTunes, Stitcher, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Spotify, or whatever else podcast player you use to listen to this podcast, or if you would subscribe to this podcast, you will help me get out in front of new runners to make our tribe even bigger and even better. It might not seem like you as one person can make a difference, but really it helps a lot. And it shows me you appreciate the hard work I put in for those. Thank you so much. What an inspiring guy. And I want to thank Brandon for coming on the show to share his story with our community and to just give us some hope, some inspiration. And there's a lot of heaviness right now. So just kind of to give us some belief in what can be achieved and just how to stay positive. So really appreciate Brandon coming on. And thank you to Sarah. That wraps up your 4 episodes. You've done a beautiful job with this. As I said at the beginning, I think some people may want to replace me with Sarah because she did such a good job. And I've loved seeing the feedback that people have given. And yeah, maybe you should start your own podcast, Sarah, if you are listening to this. I want to thank you for listening today. I hope you enjoyed that episode, and I hope you have enjoyed all other 199 episodes of the Running for Real podcast. It has been just such a joy to grow with you, to get to know you. And I'm looking forward to introducing you to episode 200. I can't actually tell you at this time who 200 is going to be. As of this recording, I do not know. I'm still working on it, but it may end up being something that is just a bit more kind of casual and relaxed, which is what I actually ended up doing with 100, more running for real, I suppose. But I'm going to keep trying to see if I can come up with something just a little bit special. I want to take a quick moment to thank Tracksmith and Ultra for sponsoring this episode. And I can tell you that you will be able to find links to everything we talked about today everything Sarah and Brandon talked about today in the show notes. at tinamuir.com/episode 199. You can also get your discounts there for the sponsors and for a few other brands at my website. So if you've been thinking about trying those things out, be sure to go to tinamuir.com/episode 199. All right, my friends, that's it for today. I'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to the Running for Real podcast. Be sure to check out tinamuir.com for show notes and even more helpful running information.